My name is Kathleen Ball, and I am the discoverer of the Knights Templar cave in Alto Paraíso, Brazil, which happened in 2015. And it was as a result of a lot of research, but that particular discovery that day appeared to be accidental. However, there were many synchronicities that evolved over several years, a period of time that happened that preceded that discovery. And we'll be talking about that in another YouTube video, which will be coming up in, probably later on this week. Anyway, so the discovery itself, I had been suffering from a liver disease for a very long time. I had several tumors, and I wanted to go into Brazil to meet with a girlfriend who was working with John of God in Abadiânia. Well, he wasn't there, so we decided to do some traveling. We went up into the Chapada, and we got a hotel, which evolved, from a whole lot of more synchronicities that happened to put us in Alto Paraíso, which we were not intending to go at all. So we ended up in Alto Paraíso. We got up the next day. I happened to meet some English-speaking people, which were rare at that time. Anyway, so they let us off. They gave us the directions to get into Agua Fria, which was a one of the waterfalls in that area, which were just magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And we're hiking back up from Agua Fria from this magnificent site, and we're just thrilled, but we're hot and tired. And the owner of the camping pousada at that site invites us to lunch. And he tells us the story about this crystal vein and all these quartz crystals that are laying all over, and invites us to go and see this phenomenon, and also to collect crystals if we wanted. So of course we wanted to go. So we went, and after 5 kilometers or so of hiking, the guide that was with us said, "Hey, you gals want to go into this little cave below? It's about another kilometer or so hiking." And mind you, we are in the middle of nowhere, and we're straight down a mountain. I mean, we are hiking straight down a mountain. So it was, it was really difficult hiking terrain. It was, not for beginning hikers. So we agreed. It was really hot that day, and we agreed to do this. So we went down to the cave area. We couldn't see a cave. I mean, there was nothing to be seen. There was so much brush. But he lifted up some brush, and behind the brush was this cave. But not only was the cave, there was a Templar cross above the cave, which just completely took me by surprise. And I mean, I was absolutely flabbergasted. And what came out of my mouth was, what is a Knights Templar cave doing in the middle of Brazil, in the middle of nowhere? And I happened to video a short interview with Leomar, who was our guide at the time. And he rattled off a bunch of, information about the cave having been used by teenagers, to party. Also, it had been used by the indigenous women to do what he called magic. But he didn't really know much about the Templar history. But I actually went inside the cave for just briefly at that particular time of the discovery. It was just brief, and I'll tell you why. I had a little flashlight that the gal that was with me, Adele Good, that my friend that was with me at the time, was hiking with me. She handed me a flashlight. So I was looking at the walls, and I saw that there was definitely Knights Templar graffiti all over the walls inside the cave. But just about the same time, I happened to notice that there were spiders crawling up my legs, and there were also bats flying all over. So as you can well imagine, I got out of the cave rather quickly and did not try to re-enter it, not on that trip. So, we're just yakking away about this discovery. I still am in disbelief. We still have now, 6 kilometers to hike straight up a hill, which is going to take us, a good deal of time. And we're talking about this discovery the whole way up. Anyway, I just didn't know exactly what to do with this discovery. I knew that it was history changing. I knew that this was a big deal, but I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. At the time, I was an art professor. I taught at a small college in Sonora, Columbia Community College, and I was perfectly happy with my life. I had a beautiful life. I was a professional artist. I was a figurative sculptor, world renowned, and I was doing really well. I was happy. I had plenty of money. There was no issues. Um, so I wasn't sure how I was going to fit this into my life, but I knew that I had to write a book or something to get this information out to the world. So fast forward, Adele and I both leave. We go to Abadiania. Not much happens there. There was a spiritual experience that happened, but not related to the discovery of the cave. And I go ahead and leave Abadiania and fly home. 9 days later, my home burns to the ground, and everything, my entire career went up in smoke in 3 minutes in the Butte fire in Northern California in 2015 on September 11th. Anyway, so I'm left with the ashes basically of my life. And I had a dream the night of the fire that I was given the opportunity to take the molecules from what was left from the fire that the fire had transformed all of my belongings into, and create something else, create a new life. And that's exactly what I did. That's exactly how I approached it. After, the insurance and everything was settled and we bought a new home and all that, there was still some money left, enough to create a documentary. So I decided to return to Brazil in 2017, and lo and behold, there was another fire in Alto Paraíso area, and it's right in the vicinity where the cave is. So I cannot get back into the cave. That's not going to happen, not that year. And it burned on and burned on and burned on. And after 2 weeks, I finally gave up and I decided, okay, I'm going to have to come back next year. Okay, well, the synchronicity that happened, just one of many, is I happened to run into some English-speaking friends in town, and they introduced me to a film director, someone who used to work with Jacques Cousteau in the 70s and 80s. And I thought, great, this is wonderful. Okay, so he agreed to come back with me in 2018. And then that's exactly what I did. I waited until 2018. I packed enough stuff for a month stay this time. So, and my hope was that I could get into the cave and really do some really good research on and photograph and video the graffiti in there. So 2008 rolls around. Trajano Baeva was the film director, and he met me. Certainly, we got together. We trekked for 3 days in the wilderness after this fire. All my landmarks had been destroyed. I hadn't the slightest idea where I was going. We were in the middle of 800 hectares, which translates loosely to about 2,400 acres of pure wilderness that had been altered by a fire the year before. So all I knew as far as landmarks was that this crystal vein would still be there. And if I could find the crystal vein and walk it up and one side and down the other, that the cave would be roughly another kilometer straight down, but I didn't know where. So we went the first day, nothing. We went the second day, hiking all day, nothing. On the third day, we struck gold. And so, but Trajano at this point is exhausted. He's been carrying this equipment around for 3 days, and it's hot again. He's tired, and he says, I'm stopping here." So he waited at the crystal vein, and I walked the vein up and down, and I happened to notice a shadow that didn't look like it was just a shadow. It looked like there might be something open behind it, like it might be, an opening. So I yelled to him, "Hey, I think I might have found it." He says, "Okay, go for it. If you do, let me know and I'll be down." So I started running, started running down towards this, towards this, what I thought was the cave. And I just felt in my heart that it was. And sure enough, I got down there, I lifted up the bushes, and there was this magnificent cave. And that is what you see on my film, The Brazilian Templars Mystery, is that rediscovery. I yell to Trajano, he comes down. We film as much as we can, but again, we can't get into the cave because it's filled with, and I'm not talking just a few hundred spiders, there were thousands of spiders. These little black spiders were everywhere, all over the base of the cave, on the walls of the cave. And in the back, it looked like, a community of bats had taken up residence in the back, and there were several hundred of the bats. So we came up with all these ideas. How are we going to get the bats and the spiders out of the cave without hurting them? All these different things we thought we were going to do. Build a small fire in front of the mouth of the cave, smoke them out, blah, blah, blah. We had all these ideas, none of which we were able to implement in 2018, however, because the caretaker for the property was busy fighting a fire in another area, because that was his secondary job. So that's the end of that in 2018. We ended with that. However, I did go into town and meet with some other researchers, and I found out that, because I suspected something was different about this cave, there was all this quartz crystal laying all around the cave, and I knew that where you find gold, you always find crystal, not necessarily the other way around. Where you find crystal, you don't always find gold. But I suspected that something was up with this cave. And sure enough, I connected with some people in town, an historian, and some locals, and I discovered that the cave was indeed a gold mine, which made tremendous sense. It totally made sense with this whole picture of why the Templars were there, and what they were doing. They were mining gold, and they were taking it back to the king in Portugal. So now we have the why. And what else was going on? There had to been, if there was one gold mine, it stood to figure that there had to be more. So then I started researching that aspect of the whole thing, and I found out that indeed there were more caves, but nobody knew exactly where they were. So here we are. I'm in Alta Paraiso. I'm trying to figure out what's the best use of the rest of my time. So I began to interview local people. And at one point, I interviewed a man who owned a pousada called Camelot. He was himself a Templar descendant, and he had built this small castle as a pousada, which is the hotel in Alta Paraiso, commemorating the Camelot, the whole myth and story of the Camelot castle in England, and its connection to the Templars and connection to the Grail Quest, etc. Well, anyway, so that was a fabulous meeting. He told me history of the Templars having been in Brazil, which he was well aware of. He introduced me to another man, Luis Salvi, who gave me more information that the Templars had indeed been in Portugal. And then lastly, I meant to meet with Leonia, who was the owner of a ranch just below the cave in Moino, and sure enough, that had been a Templar area that they had lived in at the time when they came over. So on our next time, we're gonna go into we're gonna talk about going back into Portugal and the Amazon jungle, and I will be continuing these YouTube interviews and talking to you just about what I've done to try to figure out what these Templars were doing in Brazil. So next video, we'll be talking about that. So if you enjoyed this video, enjoyed the information, and would like to hear more about this Templar discovery in Brazil and what its significance was in the whole Templar historical record, you can subscribe, and you can also go to my website to find more information, www.templarsinbrazil.com, and you can look for my films. The Brazilian Templars Mystery is the first documentary. It's still out on Gaia. And I have 2 more films that will be coming out this next year. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you back on the site.